If the disability community were recognized as a minority, it would be the largest minority group in the United States. Yet, it is still a very misunderstood and underrepresented community. I've realized this myself as a below-the-elbow congenital amputee, which just basically means that I was born without my left hand. Having one hand has compelled me to reflect upon my own limitations, my own definition of self-worth, and the way I perceive the word disabled. So what exactly is disability? Disability is a physical, mental, cognitive, or developmental condition that impairs, interferes with, or limits a person's ability to engage in certain tasks or actions, or to participate in typical daily activities and interactions. Now, while I believe that this is an accurate definition, I've come to find that the word disabled can attribute a label with negative connotations. So standing here today, I do not represent the entire disabled community, but this is my story of how I came to accept myself. But before I move on, I would first like you to imagine a life where any of your insecurities completely disappeared. Would you be the same person? So for the longest time, my biggest insecurity was my little hand. And because my insecurity is extremely distinguishable, I've had to be able to confront it head on from a very young age. So I didn't realize that I was different than anybody else until somebody told me. I didn't think anything was wrong with having one hand until somebody talked about my hand in a negative way. All kids were picked on for being different. If you had glasses, braces, anything that differed from the norm, you were noticed. So I had eventually grown accustomed to hiding my hand in a cosmetic prosthetic hand. And I was not fully comfortable with explaining why I looked different to every other kid. While it's natural for children to be curious about people's physical differences, the constant need that I felt to justify myself to others made it hard to be a normal kid. So as a kid, I eventually began to believe that I needed to overcompensate for my hand. To be honest, having one hand is not extremely physically challenging for me. I'm able to do anything that I want to do. It just might be in a different way than you would do it. So I loved playing sports. I played soccer, basketball, and I competitively danced. Sports started as a fun way for me to socialize and get out my energy. But I eventually came to realize that there were people that didn't think I was capable of playing these sports. It started when I noticed people saying things like, "Oh, she'll be easy to beat. She only has one hand." Or, "How did the girl with one hand make the team and not me?" I decided if I were going to continue playing these sports, I was going to prove all these people wrong. I really fought so hard to prove to the world that I was capable of playing anything that they could do, but I eventually lost my own inner sense of accomplishment. To this day, I can't tell if my drive to play sports was because I loved playing them or for the pressure that I felt to be as good as everybody else. So continuing on with my story, let's fast forward to my teenage years. This is a time where we were all starting to develop our own sense of identity. And at this time, I became even more consumed with what other people thought about me and what they thought about my hand. As I mentioned earlier, having one hand is not extremely physically challenging for me. It proved to be much more mentally challenging. So I started to believe that if I were the most perfect girl in every other way, my hand wouldn't matter. So if I were the most beautiful girl, the best at a sport, had a perfect body, my hand, people would ignore it. And this mindset is totally wrong, by the way, but it led me to put my whole identity into physical attributes, and I put so much pressure on myself to look perfect for others that I wasn't very happy in my own skin. And at this time, I saw girls around me starting to date, and I figured, hey, I want a boyfriend too. You know what teenage girl doesn't think this? But eventually, I began to wonder, is the reason I don't have a boyfriend because of my hand? Probably not. I was extremely shy and school-focused, but my insecurity was much easier to blame. I was so preoccupied with my physical identity that I couldn't really recognize the other positive attributes about myself. Eventually, I did become more comfortable talking about my hand in person to others. I came to understand that most people were just curious, and they did not mean to offend me. But social media exploded, and it had such an emphasis on perfection online. All of us want to look our best online, and to me, my best did not include my insecurity. But the first time I did post a picture highlighting my hand, I got a really positive response from my followers and friends. This did give me more confidence. And while it may seem pretty insignificant or shallow, if you're honest with yourself, most of us do get some sort of instant gratification from the amount of likes or comments we get online. So not only did I gain more confidence, posting this picture helped me realize that my fear of perfection, whether socially or through social media, it wasn't only a product of people who made misconceptions about me. My fear of perfection was also due to my own insecure conscience. So where am I now? I'm in biomedical engineering here at UT. I've made some really great friends and have learned a lot in my 3 years here. There really was no definite time where I realized that image and society do not define who you are. Perhaps I realized this just growing up and maturing, or by surrounding myself with more amputees similar to me. But there are methods that I've learned over time in order to help me combat my insecurity mindset. And luckily, this method is not as hard as an engineering problem. It's something that we can all practice every day. So this method is identify, fight, and disobey. First, you must identify any negative thought you hear inside your head. You may hear, "I'm not enough." First, identify that thought and bring it to full attention. You have to treat this thought like somebody else is saying it to you. In order to change the way you think about yourself from negatively to positively, you must separate this negative thought to be a separate entity from yourself. Next, you must fight against it. You need to fight against this voice as hard as you can. You must tell yourself any positive attribute about yourself that refutes this. So tell yourself, "I am capable, I am strong, I am perfect on my own terms." And finally, you must disobey the negative thought. You can do this by choosing not to believe it and choosing to believe the other positive attributes about yourself, or by engaging in a separate activity that makes you feel happier. The key is to just not give in to that negative thought. You may feel the need to hide your insecurity or overcompensate in other ways like I did. But if you embrace your insecurity, you will realize that that makes you powerful. Only you has the power to change the way you perceive yourself. Only you can choose how other people's words affect you. I think it's really important to recognize the difference between self-worth and societal confirmation. When you find your own self-worth, you do not care as much how other people perceive you. I'm telling you that you don't need to be perfect for others. You can be happy in your own skin and perfect on your own terms. So how does all this change the way I perceive myself now? I'm extremely proud to be a part of the disabled community. I realized what people thought about me and what they thought about my hand did not matter. Only I can define my own limitations and capabilities. Only I can choose how other people's words affect me. I realized the difference between overcompensation and hard work. Overcompensation is a product of doing things for others, and you'll never be happy living your life like this. Hard work and perseverance is done to please your own true self. I am no longer focused on my physical identity. I realize that there's so much more to life than how you look. I'm not just a single attribute or the girl with one hand. I am a woman engineer, an advocate, an athlete, and a good friend. I do not have to let the current connotations behind the word disabled limit me, and I can work towards changing the undertones of the word. I can share my story to empower others, whether it's through Instagram, peer counseling, or by giving a TEDx talk. So again, I want you to think about your own insecurities. Would you be who you are today without them? As you begin to answer the question, I'd like you to consider something Oprah Winfrey said. When there's no struggle, there is no strength. Thank you.